It was 2015, and let me tell you, it felt like the universe had declared war on me. My marriage was crumbling. My spouse had grown cold and indifferent, and our toddler son hadn't even been diagnosed with autism yet. But we could sense something was off. It hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and suffocating, making every day feel like a battle. By summer, I had moved my belongings into the guest quarters of our house. It became my makeshift bedroom, a bittersweet haven amid a collapsing relationship. My spouse and I were in a state of bitter denial, both waiting for the other to make the first move. Every weekday morning, my alarm jolted me awake at 5 a.m., and I spent every waking moment dreaming of a way out of my soul-sucking job as a dump truck driver. Now, I had dreams, art, poetry, but I didn't have the time or money to chase them. I was stuck in a 10 to 12-hour grind, hauling heavy equipment for a paving crew, all while my spouse offered little support. It was a relentless cycle, and I felt like I was driving my life into a brick wall. I remember sitting in my truck, staring at the horizon, wishing for something, anything, to change. Then came the second Friday of June. Just like any other payday, I was looking forward to spending the evening with my son, tucking him into bed and unwinding with a cheap bottle of whiskey. But first, I had to finish my shift. As I was prepping for my last run, my foreman, Mike, asked me to do him a favor and take an overloaded flatbed down the road. Normally, I would have said no. But I liked Mike, and I was tired of arguing. So, I reluctantly agreed. What's the worst that could happen? I thought. Maybe a fine from a DOT officer? The crew loaded a paver, a skid steer, and a roller onto a trailer that was already pushing its weight limit. As I eased off the clutch, I felt the Mack truck straining under the load. I made it to the first traffic light, narrowly avoiding a collision with the dump truck ahead of me. My heart raced as I realized my seatbelt was unbuckled. I struggled to fasten it, but it wouldn't budge. Then, the sky opened up, and a torrential downpour hit. I kept my speed below the limit, convinced it would keep me safe. But as I passed a quarry and started my descent down a steep hill, I saw the traffic ahead had come to a complete stop. My heart sank. I gently pressed the brakes, but the truck's tires skidded on the slick road, the trailer beginning to jackknife. Panic surged through me as I eased off the brakes to regain control, but it was a futile effort. I was barreling downhill toward a cluster of stopped cars, and I could feel the weight of my truck easily exceeding 60,000 pounds, pushing me closer to disaster. With no shoulders and trees lining either side of the road, I knew I had to make a choice. My instincts kicked in, and in a desperate last-ditch effort, I pulled the parking brake and stomped on the brake pedal. The reality hit me like a ton of bricks. Crashing a commercial truck is usually fatal for the driver, and without a seatbelt, my odds were looking grim. Images of my wife and son flashed through my mind, intertwined with thoughts of the innocent people I was about to collide with. I couldn't bear the thought of hurting anyone else. My last run had turned into a death march. As a non-religious guy, I found myself calling out to whatever spirit might be watching over truckers and bikers. "Make it quick," I muttered, my first and last prayer, hoping for a swift end to this nightmare. With no other choice, I veered the truck into the woods. The moment my wheels left the pavement, chaos erupted. The truck shook violently as I fought to maintain control, the metal and machinery tearing through the underbrush. I gripped the steering wheel, feeling every bump and bruise as the vehicle mowed down everything in its path. Then came the worst part. A massive bump sent me crashing into the ceiling. Blood sprayed everywhere. I thought I was having a heart attack when the truck finally hit a dip and came to a screeching halt, a heavy pressure pushing into my chest. Somehow, I hadn't gone flying through the windshield. It was like a miracle wrapped in a nightmare. As I stepped out of the smoldering wreck that was once a sturdy Mack truck, blood coated my body, and I felt something strange on my head. A piece of plastic, maybe a grocery bag, stuck there. It wasn't just a bag. In that moment, I didn't realize that a part of my scalp had been partially degloved. It peeled right off my skull, leaving my head exposed and blood pouring down. It hung off the side of my head, reminiscent of a fruit peel, a gruesome reminder of the impact. I must have hit the ceiling of the truck's interior during the crash. But what hurt more than anything else was my chest. It wasn't the steering wheel that caused the pain, and I knew it wasn't a heart attack. I had no idea what had delivered a brutal blow to my sternum. All I knew was that I was grateful to be alive. Moments later, paramedics were there, slipping a C-collar around my neck and strapping me to a backboard. They loaded me into the ambulance, and I could feel my favorite punk rock shirt, my Blitz t-shirt, soaked in blood as they sheared it off me. They took my vitals and asked questions meant to assess how conscious I was. Then, for a heartbeat, silence fell. I turned my head, catching the medics staring at my chest, their mouths agape and eyes wide with disbelief. "Am I gonna make it?" I joked, trying to lighten the mood. After a second, they assured me everything would be fine and continued with their routine measures during transport. As I lay there, I began to reflect on the day's events in the hospital. The doctors doped me up, stapled and bandaged my scalp, and finally admitted me to my room. My mind raced through my terrible judgment, that last-minute decision I had made, the prayer of a dying man, and the sheer luck that kept me from flying through the windshield. In my hospital room, I stood bare-chested before a mirror, gazing at my bruise. Across my chest, spanning about 12 inches in length, was a deep purple mark in the shape of a giant, ghastly hand.